Good evening, everyone. We want to thank all of you for being in attendance at tonight's commission meeting. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order.
Roll call. Walker.
Here.
Townsend.
Here.
McKiernan.
Here.
Mugia. Here. Maddox.
Here.
Kane. Markley. Here. Walters.
Here.
Philbrook.
Here.
Holland.
Here. This evening, the invocation is being given by Sister Therese Bangert of Our Lady in St. Rose Catholic Church. Please stand and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dearest God, ever with us, in this season of much rushing, let us take a moment to acknowledge your presence. On these darkest of days, when we wait again for the sunlight to increase, we bring our faith to you. We ask for your light to renew us and direct us. Our brother Nelson Mandela had many wise words which included, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. You are a child of God. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And so, God, I thank you for your glory manifested in these leaders in Wyandotte County. Bless our KCK community. Enable us to shine your light in our dark places. We place our trust in you for this meeting during these holy days and in the new year that we will soon begin. And I pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll ask the clerk at this time to discuss the sign-up procedure.
There are 2 tables on the corner of each of the individual areas. If you're interested in signing up for the public hearing, please do so at this time.
All right, before we get started tonight, I do want to acknowledge some folks who are in the audience with us, some dignitaries in the audience today. I want to recognize Jeff Bryant with the Board of Public Utilities. I want to recognize Representative Burrows. Welcome. We also want to recognize the Mayor of Bonner Springs, Jeff Harrington, and the former Mayor of Bonner Springs, Mr. Clausy Smith. Welcome to all of you. We appreciate your being in attendance tonight. Ms. Cobbins, are there any revisions to tonight's agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, a blue sheet has been distributed. Under Section 9, the Standing Committee agenda, we have a new item. It's item number 1, a communication for the bus route of 101. Under the Administrator's agenda, we have additional information under item number 1, a resolution for security plans.
Okay, thank you. All right, that brings us to our consent agenda. The consent agenda is printed here in our packet. Does any member of the commission, staff, or citizen in attendance tonight wish to set aside an item on tonight's consent agenda? You need to step forward at this time, state your name and address for the record, and ask that that item be set aside. If an item is not set aside, all items on the consent agenda will be voted upon by one vote. Commissioner Walker.
Item number 1.
Item number 1 is set aside. Are there others? Okay. I hear no others being set aside at this time.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. All roll call.
Roll call Walker,
Yes.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan,
Aye.
Mugia, Maddox,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Walters, Philbrook.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
All right, thank you. That brings us to item number 1, the distribution of the 2014 alcohol and drug funds. Commissioner Walker, you set that aside. The floor is yours.
I have a question for Ms. Maslowski. My question is, I see that there's only 2 allocations. In the past, I seem to remember there was a number of allocations being made.
Correct. Over the years, the funding has decreased for the alcohol tax funds that are dispersed in the community. We, as an advisory board, had decided that there were going to be more requirements for this tax fund, such as the agencies have to have an office in Wyandotte County and also have to use evidence-based practices for their programming.
Okay. How many altogether did we have apply?
Total, we had 5 agencies that applied. 2 of the agencies turned in their applications after the deadline. And the advisory board recommended 3 agencies be funded. The standing committee recommended 1 agency not be funded due to the lack of information submitted in their application.
All right. Thank you. Move approval. Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Are there any further comments? Seeing none, roll call.
Roll call Walker,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan,
Aye.
Mugia, Maddox,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Walters, Philbrook.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
All right, thank you. That concludes the consent agenda. That now brings us to our public hearing agenda. We have 2 separate public hearings tonight. The first is to consider the establishment of Community Improvement District Number 2 at 39th and Rainbow TIF project, areas 1 and 2, along with the ordinance. I would like to ask the clerk, did anyone sign up to speak to this issue?
There are none, sir.
Okay, so no one signed up to speak to the 39th and Rainbow TIF district. All right, let the record show that.
Move approval.
It has been moved and seconded. Seeing no further comment, roll call.
Roll call Walker,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan,
Aye.
Mugia, Maddox,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Walters, Philbrook.
Aye.
The vote is 8-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Brakovic, that was one of your most excellent presentations. That brings us now to item number 2. Our next public hearing is to consider amendment to the Prairie Delaware Redevelopment Plan Project Area B, which is a long way of saying we're going to talk about the T-bones. But one of the things I will remind us that the public hearing tonight is about amending the Starbond district in which the T-Bone Stadium sits that would allow for the purchase of the stadium by the unified government. It does not mandate the purchase of the stadium. We do not have a development agreement yet with the owners. We're working hard on that. So tonight, the decision is whether or not to amend the Starbond district. The effect of that will be very simple. If there is a development agreement, it will give us authority to purchase the stadium. If there is not a development agreement, this amendment will have no effect, as it will just sit there unchanged. So really what we're doing today is giving permission for the discussion to continue forward. The other piece that's important, we're required by state law to have a 30-day hearing period, notice period before this hearing. And so this is an important part of the process, and so we're glad everyone's here today who has interest in this topic. I will now ask the staff to provide some opening comments, and then we will move forward. Am I doing the calendar first? Okay, thank you. I apologize. I want to give a chronology to the public, and I asked for it to be on slides so the folks who are watching at home could see it on television as well. So if we can make sure we get a camera on this chronology. This is a complete chronology of the process that we have gone through for full disclosure. One of the things that has been clear is there are a lot of times when progress is made that does not become public until we're ready to take action, and this would be another example of that. But in late 2011, early 2012, the T-Bones marketed the team and stadium to potential buyers. We're not successful in that. In summer of 2012, that would have been last summer, T-Bones suggests continuing to operate the team but selling the stadium to the unified government. In August of 2012, the unified government staff undertakes due diligence and begins an economic study of what stadium acquisition would mean. And in December of last year, agreement developed requiring T-Bones to operate in 2013, which is this past season, and granting a UG option to purchase the stadium in 2013. So in June 20th of this year, we had an executive session with this commission and discussed the option agreement was presented. The administrator had entered into an option agreement to purchase the stadium, and this came now after that it came to the whole commission in executive session. I just want to say a word about executive session. Executive session is set up by state law, and it is for only a handful of purposes when commissioners can meet behind closed doors anywhere in the state of Kansas, and frankly, it's common practice throughout the entire country. But the handful of times that you can use executive session, one is property acquisition, which is what this process is. Another is for personnel, if you're dealing with a single individual. The other is for labor negotiations, and another is for litigation. And there are about 4 or 5 others that are rarely used, but those are the 4 most common. And whenever we enter into executive session, we always have to state the reason for it and the time length of that meeting. In fact, we just had one at 5 o'clock tonight. We had an executive session on litigation that was 45 minutes long. The commission met and discussed that issue behind closed doors and gave our legal team direction in terms of moving forward. So this is a common part. We have an executive session not before every commission meeting, not every week that we meet, but almost every week that we meet, there's one of those issues that come up. So because this was property acquisition, it was handled in executive session. And the last thing I want to say about that is there's a difference between private and confidential. Confidential simply means that it's held in confidence until it can get out. If you have property acquisition, for instance, and we're looking at buying a piece of property, and that address gets out, you can bet that the price of that goes up. And so in order to protect the unified government and the taxpayers, this tool is allowed in order to make sure that those conversations and dialogue goes on confidentially. But before a purchase can be made or before any action can be taken publicly, there is a time for a public hearing and a public vote. So it always comes before the public, any action that we actually take. So including labor negotiations. We might meet in executive session 4 or 5 times through the course of labor negotiations with one of our unions. But then the actual contract that we vote upon is a public document. Any contract we vote on is a public vote, and it is publicly distributed. So we are not allowed to take votes in executive session. We can give direction, but we are not allowed to take action. So no action has been taken with this executive session. The option agreement was presented to the new commission, and we met on June 20th, we met July 11th, we met with updates on the 12th, September 12th, October 24th, September 7th, and then in November 21st, when we had enough information to move forward, we brought that information to a public presentation and discussion and set this public hearing date, which was required by law to be 30 days out from the presentation. So here we are tonight, December 19th, with a public hearing to amend this tourism district. And then sometime in January, we do not have the official date, when we are able to, when our staff is able to reach a conclusion in the contract negotiations, then we would vote on the development agreement, pending the passage of this. If this does not pass tonight, I'm anticipating, we might have another executive session, but I'm anticipating we're not going forward with the development agreement without the financial means to actually do it. So this is an important tool in terms of setting up the financial means. So that gives you a chronology of the process of how we've gotten here, and now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bach to present the content of what we've been talking about.
Thank you, Mayor, Commission, members of the public. I'm Doug Bach, and the Deputy County Administrator for the Unified Government. Tonight in this presentation, I'm going to run down a little bit of background that we have with the T-Bones, financial impact they've made to our community over the years, and the deal structure that we are working on to bring back to the governing body should we move forward from tonight's meeting. As you can note, in 2003, the Unified Government entered into a public-private partnership to bring the T-Bones to Kansas City, Kansas. They were in Duluth, Minnesota at the time, and by the structuring of the deal we did here to build the stadium, or that they built, in coordination with the rest of the tourism district, they came here. Over the years, it's provided for affordable, quality family entertainment, enhanced overall Village West tourism in the area, has resulted in almost $50 million in economic impact, and created a market image for Kansas City, Kansas, and Wyandotte County. The challenge we see to this is that fortunately the T-Bones have been successful. Unfortunately, the private ownership structure that we put in place has been unsustainable. It's worked for about a decade, but it has been a difficult task for them to maintain and keep in place. The risk we're now facing is that we may lose the T-Bones, and our challenge that we set out a month ago in the public meeting was, what can we do to retain a successful minor league ball club in Kansas City, Kansas, and with a new ownership structure that protects the interest and that of the taxpayers. A little bit of chronology of what's happened with the T-Bones and some fun facts that are up here. They opened in June 6, 2003. I will say it was one of the fastest development deals we worked on. We literally had met the T-Bones, I think, in August of the preceding year, and then proceeded to move forward and determine how that stadium could be built on a piece of ground in connection with the rest of the development out there, and has really put a lot of excitement and energy into the project area when we started. The average annual attendance is 250,000. It ranks third among the independent ball clubs, and I think that's about 56 or 58 or something like that in North America. They're a single-A stadium, seat a little over 5,100 people, and there's some nice facts about how many hot dogs and ounces of beer and such they've sold over the year to show their additional impact. The Village West area as a whole has 111 businesses, including 29 restaurants, and there's 5,700 people that are employed there. This does not count the additional employees that are coming in from the Cerner development, which is adding 4,000 additional employees to that office area. I think it's important when you note the number of businesses and the restaurants that are in the area. These are all ones that people that go to the T-Bones, not just individuals from Wyandotte County, but from other cities around the metro area and come into our community, they visit these shops and visit these restaurants when they're in town. The Village West area has approximately 10 million visitors plus overall. And you can see some of the annual revenues that are coming in from this development. Total economic impact is listed on this slide, and it might be a little hard for some of you to see from the back of the room, so I'll note a few of these numbers. The direct economic impact we receive, and the direct economic impact is that which is like direct sales tax, direct property tax and such that is paid, alcohol sales tax that are paid that come back into the community is a little over $400,000. Other economic impact comes into areas where money they spend on utilities, visiting team lodging as they come in over the years. The personnel, as far as their payroll, is about $1.8 million. And other expenditures they have, this total equals a little over $2.5 million that is spent in the Kansas City metropolitan area each year. A large part of it in our county, but it is one that can go anywhere in the area, and obviously not all the employees work or live in our community. Another additional indirect impact numbers come from the attendance numbers that you can calculate and use multipliers on, and that number is about $1.5 million. So all told, the overall economic impact estimated for the T-Bones being in Kansas City, Kansas on an annual basis is over $4.5 million that we experience. And this is money that feeds out into the rest of the metropolitan area, feeds out into Kansas City, Kansas, and Wyandotte County, particularly in the Village West area, to help spend and buy additional sales tax in that project area. Okay, the T-Bones deal structure. As I noted, the current financial model is unsustainable, and under consideration is a deal which would bring agreement with the T-Bones into alignment with that of the national model for other, which is public ownership. And we looked around at the other stadiums. They're all under public ownership, and you can see this in the minor league level, and you can see this in the professional level. And outside of maybe Jerry Jones, who owns the Dallas Cowboys, is one that's under private ownership, but everything else is in an area where there is that public ownership of the stadiums. What we're looking for is the unified government to have the ability to acquire the stadium using our Star Bond authority. Okay, some of the proposed deal structure points that we've noted, and they are in the handouts that I think many people should have been able to get a copy of tonight, is that there is a purchase price listed here at $5.5 million. There's a continued commitment from the T-Bones to pay 50-cent ticket tax, which goes back to Parks and Rec. This is something that was in our original agreement with the T-Bones when they came to town, and this continues the same agreement that we had in place with them going forward. Additionally, we put in this that there would be a 25% profit sharing tool in place for non-baseball functions. So if we're able to work on additional things with T-Bones in the coming years, the unified government would be able to share in those profits. There's a new public multi-purpose stadium which will be available year-round for our Parks and Recreation Department to schedule events. And obviously we schedule outside of what's going on with the baseball activities, but it really makes it a community stadium from our Parks and Rec Department and areas to utilize for our community. Also, we're looking at our high schools to say that they can go out there, and this is a greatly discounted price from what high schools could rent the T-Bones today. To go out for $250 for a day, they could have a game out there and play, and it gives our local community, our ball players, the opportunity to get out and play in a big stadium and really experience something different. The team ownership is required to come back to the unified government sometime during the next 20 years if they elect a sale. There are provisions there that if they were to sell it to somebody that has significant baseball experience and $5 million of value, then that would qualify as someone they would sell it to. Otherwise, they're looking to us for approval to do such, so we know who our partner will be out there. The T-Bones will be responsible for the day-to-day operating cost, and the unified government will be responsible for the more substantial capital costs that could come along over the years. If there is major damage to the stadium, which is something we wouldn't suspect, but that is just part of the agreement, we would have to rebuild up to a cost of $100,000. If the damage is greater than that, then it's really up to our decision whether or not we would want to invest a larger capital amount of money in it in the future. The T-Bones is committed to play ball for the next 20 years in that stadium. However, on the other side of that, as we are investing and taking ownership in this structure, we can terminate the lease in a couple of years. There are different provisions as to how that can stair-step down, but after the 2015 season, should we elect to for some reason, we could change the direction of where we're going with it. Acquisition and upgrade revenue will come from the STAR dollars. And to just get into this, so the state of Kansas has expressed their willingness to partner with us to make this project happen. And as you all know, the STAR bonds is a mechanism that allows us to use not only the local sales tax dollars that are generated on site, but also the state dollars. In this case, the state has said they'll pledge 30% of their dollars that go toward this project. So this is a unique time for us that maybe in the future, if we didn't act on this now, we wouldn't be able to leverage STAR bonds. So now our community is able to take advantage of the STAR tool by doing it at this time and really leverage statewide money that our community would never see if we didn't do it now. The structure of this increase for the STAR bonds, which are scheduled to pay off in 2017, would increase that by approximately 4 months. And I'll probably contend that's in just a straight everything apples to apples. Wouldn't count anything if we had any negative impact if we didn't do this with the T-Bones and they shut down for a couple of years. As I noted on the earlier slides, there's a $4.5 million impact that comes out into the metro area from the presence of the T-Bones. Some of that happens to the T-Bones because it goes to the 29 restaurants and 110 shops there from people coming into the area. So that helps keep the bond payment structure on cycle. So if you can't really say that this is a full extension, because if we just let them shut down, we would probably by that very action cause the STAR bonds to be delayed somewhat as well. Under consideration tonight, as mayor, as you said, we're going to hold a public hearing as I conclude to let the community offer their input. We're considering an amendment to the Prairie Delaware Redevelopment District, or the Village West area. That has been the tool that we've set out under the STAR bond legislation all along that allows us to talk about what the area, where the area it is, how many bonds you can issue, and look at it. And basically, we did a feasibility and redevelopment plan, put that on file in the clerk's office on November 20th. It's also been posted on our website, and what this does is demonstrate that the site can generate well over the amount of money, the $8 million that's in this structure, but it can generate well over that amount of money to make it happen. And the analysis does all that as it demonstrates the capacity. And at this point, Mayor, unless there's any questions for me at this time, I would recommend we proceed to the public hearing.
Are there any questions from commissioners for Mr. Bach? Okay, I see none. What I want to do, Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you for that presentation. The only figure I was looking to hear that I didn't see in that, or correct me, is the estimated cost or any actuals you have for operation of the stadium that may accrue to the UG under this deal.
Okay, for actual operating costs, we will not have any, because the day-to-day operating cost to keep the stadium going and operating will be that which is put back on the T-Bones organization themselves. If we elect to go out and do some parks, special parks and recreation activity, that would really be our staff and such like that would go into, but we would know that. That would be something we would opt into in the future. Capital cost, as it comes, and the deal structure that we've worked out with the state is that we're able to put $2.5 million into a capital account for any upgrades and some of these costs for capital costs. We will be responsible for those. And those are numbers that the T-Bones do experience in the range of around $100,000. So we do have money that'll be there to take care of us for a while anyway. But at some point that does come back, I guess, that we'll look at it and that'll be our responsibility.
Okay, so that I'm clear, capital costs would be our responsibility, and that would include what types of expenditures?
These are major improvements of the stadium. So if you were to come into it and let's say you were to completely change out the scoreboard, and it's something like that, or you have large areas of the stadium that need to be repaired, fixed, such like that, that's where you would turn to the capital dollars and fix it.
One last question. I thought currently, are there any major capital expenditures that we can foresee right now that may need to be done within the next couple of years?
I do, yes. There are some things that we're looking at, probably from the mechanical and such like that, that could come into play that we would probably deem over on the capital side, and that's why we have that account in place with the STAR revenues to be able to take those out now, and then we don't have to worry about them in the long term.
Commissioner Walker.
I'll defer until the public hearing's over.
Okay. Commissioner Murguia.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much. I just have about 5 questions, and hopefully they'll be short for you. So the acquisition cost is $5.5 million, but the total request is for $8 million, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and the difference between the $5.5 million and the $8 million is the amount of money that we'll be spending on capital improvements at the stadium, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have an estimate of typical capital costs at a stadium that size, something you could break down on an annual basis? Do you know that, Mr. Bach?
Yeah, I mean, we've looked back over the number of years with the T-Bones and how much they expend.
And can you tell me what that is?
The number ranges around $100,000, I believe, on an annual basis, or where they'll have numbers in that category.
Okay. So would you anticipate that as part of the development agreement, and as part of the way we finance an acquisition like that there would be a reserve fund set aside for capital improvements at $100,000 a year?
Yes. I think we're going to be covering that initially, obviously with what we have set aside with the state.
Right, but aren't we going to invest that $2 million in some right away?
Right now, we don't have plans to invest that right away. And some of that was the conversations with the state of Kansas as they talked about if there is some substantial change that needs to be made to it. If not, then we wouldn't go there.
So with that, so then that $2.2 million would be set aside in sort of like a reserve fund to hold for when capital costs were deemed necessary?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You mentioned two pieces of the current development agreement that I'm curious about. You said that 50 cents per ticket has been given back to the unified government for our Park and Rec department. Do you know how much money that generates annually?
Sure,
it varies slightly. I'm just asking for an
No, I should know that number right off the top of my head. I'm looking, Lou. Yeah, I want to say it's around $100,000.
Okay, and then you also said that the T-Bones have been generous to provide 25% of profits from non-baseball activity that was held at the stadium. Can you tell me what kind of revenue annually was seen in regard to that agreement?
That's actually a new provision. That's not an existing provision. That's part of going into the public ownership so that the T-Bones are managing, well, they're managing baseball operations, but they'll manage new events that could take place out there. So if they were to bring in, let's say, a concert or something like that, and the profit that would come from there is what we would be able to share in. So I will say that has been a limited area for them previously. Most of the non-baseball events that you're seeing conducted at the T-Bones today are those that are like a 5K run or such that starts out of that area. That's not really a profit area that you see much happening from. But a good example of that would have been in the past when Sporting, formerly the Wizards, entered into a contract and played soccer out there. Then that would be an example of something that we would have the opportunity to partake in and share in the revenue that came from that.
Okay. And can you, I have just one last question here. We've said repeatedly that the private ownership, the public, or the private ownership of this stadium has not been stable and is not a long-term solution. So can you explain maybe why you think that a government-owned stadium would be a more financially stable situation?
Sure, and it wasn't the word stable, I said unsustainable. So, and that's really comes back to the deal structure that was set out, and taking a look at the model that we put in place. I think the Ellerts have commented to us that maybe we negotiated too good a deal for the unified government 10 years ago. I mean, because it really is a structure that's different than you see in any of the other stadiums that are out there. The change that comes to it is that, one, they enter into, there's a debt structure on the stadium, a large part of which they will still hold, but that goes away from the stadium. It's no longer put on it because we'll have a clean title of what we have from the stadium. So you take away the need for the operator of the ball club to worry about any kind of debt structure on the stadium. Also, through the operation, as we talked about, some of the future capital cost, that'll be over on our side of the ledger, so that's another cost that's not there. So what we've done is taken away a large expense figures from the team owner. And you allow the team owner to play baseball, run baseball, and take care of baseball operations. As we see, you know, in the Royals operation, the Chiefs and such like that, and how they run their operations, and this will be a similar model, which is, I'll say, more comparatively like the other independent league teams that you have. And that's how it creates a sustainable model for them to be able to operate in the past.
Okay, well,
or in the future.
Your question, or your response prompts another question.
Okay.
Sorry.
I try not to do that, but sometimes.
So, when this stadium was initially built, I was not a commissioner. So, I am unaware of the financing around the initial build out of that stadium.
Okay.
Did we offer any incentives or development incentives to build that stadium? And if we did, do you know the dollar amount on that?
And we didn't offer any to build it. I mean, and I'll qualify so I'm clear with my answer. The vertical improvement of the stadium was all paid for with private dollars.
Was all paid for by what?
Private dollars. So, and at the time, STAR bond legislation did not allow for you to use STAR dollars to build the stadium. Like we did with Sporting Kansas City, the law has changed since that time, and a multi-purpose sporting stadium like that can be used, and we use STAR dollars to build Sporting Stadium. But in the case of the T-Bones, it was all built from that standpoint.
But no other incentives?
We had relationships with Red Development, who was the owner of the Legends property and built the Legends property. I will say a related incentive went to them as far as STAR dollars they generated and built the, the parking lot that sits around the area. And then there were some infrastructure improvements that were put in. So, I mean, we put in the road, the street, Stadium Parkway that runs down the road out in front of the area, power and such that's built around the site and comes to the area. And a lot of costs came into that from STAR dollars that were built into the project. But nothing that went into the stadium and up vertical into the stadium.
And the estimate of those costs, do you know those?
I would say if you were to go over the area out and all around there, there was probably $5 million. And that, and of course, some of that's multi-purpose dollars that went into, you know, what shared parking and such could be.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Sure.
All right, are there any other questions from the commissioners? All right, seeing none, I understand. No, you're doing fine. Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One last question. What will the tax situation be to the UG?
Okay.
If we become the owners? You know, what is that generating now, and what will happen to that?
It generates about $200,000 annually in property tax. We anticipate being tax exempt. We are structuring our deal and the relationship with the T-Bones so it's similar to other deals. Probably the best one I can compare it to would be the Wichita Stadium. I can't think of their name right now, but they have a minor league ball team that plays there. By the community use components that are put in place, and then you lease it out to someone to come in and manage operations that happen within there. So we're looking to be tax exempt. That is correct. And I have had that conversation with the school district that is in this area, so they're aware of that future impact that would have.
All right. I don't see any other questions. I understand Mr. Ellert would like to make comment. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'll invite Mr. Ellert to come forward. He's the owner of the T-Bones to make comment at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Bach and Mr. Mayor and the Commission. I thank you for your earnest consideration and your work, both now and previously. This project looks, at first blush, like a bit of an odd animal, but in actuality, it really is a typical stadium deal on a very small level. While I mention it's a typical small stadium deal, I need to offer one caveat. It's a small stadium deal a little bit in reverse, but I'll touch on that again shortly. More than a decade ago, STAR bonds could not be used for stadium construction or acquisition. That law obviously has since changed, and that's why we're here today, or part of why we're here today. And speaking of being here, I'm thrilled to be in Kansas City, Kansas. With that, when my family began looking for a new and a permanent home for our baseball team that we were relocating from the frozen north, we fell in love with Wyandotte County for a lot of reasons. And perhaps because we were so enamored, we brazenly took an optimistic leap and we built the ballpark privately. Naysayers, of which there were many at the time, naysayers didn't give us a year or 2 years or sometimes even 5 years. But now, through significant and continued personal investment, and also through the diligence of a small but very dedicated staff, we're still in the business of providing affordable, family-friendly entertainment to Wyandotte County, now going on 12 years. Our product is sound, and I think we will hear that from some of these folks here tonight. And again, our product really is affordable family entertainment in the form of independent professional baseball. Now, you might ask a question, and it would be an entirely valid question. If our product is sound, why are we here? That reason is, no matter how successful a team may be, and a team in any sport, it cannot support a facility on its own. The T-Bones are consistently in the top 5% of sponsorship and ticket sales, and in the top 5% across independent baseball. Those numbers, thanks to terrific baseball fans here in Kansas City, those numbers rival that of many AA and actually quite a few AAA clubs. And I mention that as an indicator really of the long-term and future security of this project. Sports are a community asset, and think about it, please, from youth sports through high school and college, all the way up to major league facilities pushing $1 billion. Yes, $1 billion. Facilities, by their very nature and definition, need to be civically supported. Communities all across the country build stadiums, ballparks, and arenas on spec in hopes of attracting a team as a civic amenity. Our community obviously is no exception. And this gets us perhaps to the beauty of what a small stadium deal is in reverse. Because we're sort of working backwards here, we know the T-Bones are a proven product. And with that, even as we've been carrying the heavy burden of construction debt, we have not varied from our affordable family entertainment mantra. That has remained consistent, and it will remain consistent through the future. Customers have responded, and we are stable, we're proven, and we could, looking at the right public-private partnership, potentially be here for the long haul. This project simply gets the T-Bones closer to a level playing field, and a level playing field both with facilities across the country and across the city, especially with other Starbond supported facilities in our community. So, please, understanding this project is unique only in the fact that we are not already a public-private partnership. Indulge me for one moment, and I'll explain a little bit of how efficient this project will be. Using some very rudimentary math, the amount of public investment broken out over the course of the lease per T-Bones fan works out to be just over $1 per fan. Now, I know that might sound significant, but reflective of the nearly $5 million annual economic impact, the community absolutely comes out ahead. And to offer a bit further perspective, the teams in our market most closely comparative to us play across town at the Independence Event Center. And so if we extrapolate and use the same mathematical formula and run this against two teams' attendance, that cost per fan is more than $17. So that obviously is a huge jump from the efficiency of our project, and I will put our numbers up against any project in the country. And in the interest of sanity, I'm not even going to run the mind-boggling math reflective of those multi-million-dollar facilities across the country. So to sum up, this really is an efficient project and one that adds and continues affordable smiles in our city, especially when you consider that this is the exact and ideal use of Starbonds. The entire development is self-sufficient and ultimately adds tremendously to our community. I think several years down the road, especially as our partnership matures, that this project will be hailed and lauded for that efficiency. Moving forward, I understand several speakers will be afforded some time. I apologize if I've used more than my fair share. But perhaps in the interest of efficiency, could I ask those in support of the project, please, to stand up or wave a show of hands? That might streamline things a little bit. Thank you, and I thank you all for being here. I thank the Commission for your work and your consideration, And finally, as everything is electronic these days, Ms. Cobbins, if I may distribute, I have just a handful of some kind of feel-good comments generated via Facebook over the last couple of years, in case you need some bedtime reading. But thank you all for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay, so we have, the clerk has a list of 19 individuals who have signed up to give comment tonight. We also have a number, in addition to what's being distributed now via Facebook. I don't think I've ever seen a Facebook page printed on paper, so I'm really eager to see what this looks like. In addition to this, we have received, I will ask the clerk to report to the commission how many emails we have received to date regarding this transaction.
At 4 o'clock today, the clerk's office received 43 letters of support and 1 letter in opposition.
Okay. Can you please repeat?
At 4:30 today, the clerk's office had received 43 letters of support and 1 letter in opposition.
Okay, so we received 43 emails in support and 1 email in opposition.
Correct.
These, all of these emails are included in a packet for the commission, including the name and, if available, where they're from. Unless there's a major objection from the commission, I'm inclined not to have the clerk read all 44 letters. I see no objection, but we do want to make sure the commission has access to this, so you can have that for your knowledge as well. The other component is we have the 19 individuals who come here to speak. My recommendation is that we encourage everyone to make your comments within 3 minutes, and so that we give ample time to everyone who would like to speak. So if you can please anticipate your comments at 3 minutes, that would be a great help for us as we get through, because we want to hear everyone's comments and have an opportunity to weigh those properly. So I'm going to ask the clerk to open up the public hearing, and as she does, she will call the names. I'll let her tell the whole procedure. She's got this down.
Mr. Mayor, we have a total of 17 individuals now. 2 names were removed from the list. We would like to welcome all present to the public meeting of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas, regarding the Community America T-Bones Ballpark. We appreciate the attendance of those people here this evening, and we recognize the importance of your views. We would, however, remind you that there are 17 individuals signed up to speak. Each person will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. Should you go to the 2-minute mark, I will announce that you have 1 minute remaining, and that will allow you time to wrap up your comments. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address for the record. We would appreciate your efforts to be considerate to all during their comments. We ask that anyone with a cell phone to please turn them off or switch to non-audio so you will not disturb the hearing and the recording purposes. I will call the name of the individual that will need to come to the podium. The next name will be called on deck. That means that you will proceed to the podium as soon as the person speaking begins. The first person to the podium is Bridget Job. On deck will be Bob Felix.
Good evening. My name is Bridget Job. I live at 2718 North 123rd, and I am the Executive Director of the Kansas City, Kansas Convention and Visitors Bureau. And I am here to speak in support of the proposal for the Community America Ballpark. The Kansas City T-Bones and Community America Ballpark are vital pieces of the tourism picture for our city. The ballpark sits in a visible and high-traffic corner in the Village West area. It is imperative that we maintain the quality of one of the top visitor destinations in the state of Kansas. The T-Bones players and staff have ingrained themselves in our community. They're in our civic organizations, they're involved in community events, and in fact, their general manager is the incoming 2014 chairman of the board for the Kansas City, Kansas Visitors Bureau. A T-Bones game, with its family-friendly atmosphere and its value, fits exactly with the message that we as the Bureau share with visitors about Kansas City, Kansas. Our visitors look for multiple types of activities while they are here, and a T-Bones game is a great option. The average attendance at a game at Community America Ballpark is 5,420 fans. That means over 265,000 people came through their doors last year. Out of those fans, 92% of the single game ticket buyers came from outside Wyandotte County. These fans are seen before and after a game at our restaurants, our retail venues, and even stopping to fill up with gas just down the street. The visiting teams that come to play at Community America Ballpark utilized over 800 room nights in KCK in 2013. The dollars spent by these fans and visitors benefit our entire community. In addition to minor league ball games, Community America Ballpark is home to the annual MIAA Conference Baseball Championship. It hosts several RBI Classic baseball games. It's home to the annual Bonner Springs High School Baseball Tournament. It hosts various charity walks and runs. It hosts 2 to 3 annual Boy Scout and Girl Scout sleepovers. There's concerts and other special events. All of these events bring additional room nights and revenue to the city. The Kansas City, Kansas Convention and Visitors Bureau looks forward to a long-term relationship with the Kansas City T-Bones, with their organization, and we look forward to the continuation of a quality ballpark as part of our tourism picture. Thank you.
Bob Felix to the podium, Jeff Harrington on deck.
My name is Robert Felix. I live at 6639 Berry Road in Morris Township, Kansas City, Kansas, better known as the forgotten part of Kansas City, Kansas, except at tax time. I'm here tonight wanting to know how you can find money to buy a ball team when you've done nothing to take our taxes and not even improve our roads or given us any city service in the last 53 years I've lived here. Your improvements consist of a shovel full of asphalt every now and then, and don't even roll it down with a roller. We haven't gotten any improvements since we had annexed in 82 or 83. You refuse to give us sidewalks. We have to walk in the street. You charge us a water management fee on our utility bills, and we don't even have sewers for the water to run into. You charge us at $2 at first, and now it's $4.50, and you charge it to 59,000 families in Wyandotte County. That adds up to $265,000 a month, which is $3,186,000 a year. What are you doing with that money? My real estate tax valuation went from $69,000 in 2011 to $104,000 in 2012. I'm supporting the ball team. In 1 year, my home's getting older, not newer. When the city unified, it was supposed to help lower our taxes, but all they have done is go up. In the 53 years we've lived here, the real estate taxes went down only one time. The other 52 years they have gone up because of your west side development. I'm paying for that, and the rest of my tax-paying buddies. All Wyandotte County wants to do is build racetracks and casinos, and they have let the rest of the city go to hell. We have part-time police protection in the daytime and none at night. If you had a ball team, the first thing you'd do was raise the admission, parking, and food vendors. You can't run the city like you should. What makes you think you can run a ball team in a city? Going to rob them both? It seems like we get crook from both the Republicans and the Democrats. Maybe we should try something different. Thank you.
I will advise that we do have a decorum here. We do not allow clapping or speaking out during the meeting. If people choose not to follow that, I will ask the Sergeant at Arms to ask you to leave.
Jeff Harrington to the podium, Closie Smith on deck.
Jeff Harrington, Mayor of Bonner Springs, Kansas, 914 South 131st, Bonner Springs. It's with great pleasure I'm here this evening to greet all of you, the Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas Commissioners and Mayor Holland. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I bring you the best of holiday greetings from my City Council as well as the City of Bonner Springs, and would like to stand here and speak in favor personally of this redevelopment plan for the Village West Community America Ballpark and the T-Bones. This is an asset of our community that I think would be sorely missed if it happened to fall to the wayside. The modern business plans for professional ballparks leaves us with this as practically the only and best option to follow. So I greatly appreciate your consideration. I certainly won't use up all of my time, and I want to thank you all for the time and concern you put into this. Thank you very much. And I believe Mayor Smith also would like to come. Do you want to still come up? All right. Thank you very much.
Clausy Smith to the podium. On deck would be Greg Jackson.
Ladies and gentlemen of the commission, thank you for this opportunity. What you have tonight is a win-win-win situation. It's a win for the T-Bones, and we need the T-Bones to provide quality entertainment and quality publicity for Wyandotte County. It's a win for the entire metropolitan area because it gives them an alternative form of entertainment that's cheap, family-oriented, and parking's free. So that's another asset. And finally, it's a win for the entire Wyandotte County. We need the T-Bones. They're great corporate neighbors. I've worked with them in many areas. I know of many, many young people who have worked there in the summertime, gone on, they hire local young people. It's a win-win-win situation. I want to thank you for letting me make my comments.
Greg Jackson to the podium. Norman Scott of 501 North 86th Street will be on deck.
Hello, Councilman and Mayor. My name is Greg Jackson, 5125 Roundtree Street, Shawnee, Kansas. I am the general manager of Dave & Buster's, located out in the Village West area, Legends Mall. The T-Bones and I have partnered in the past. We've been there about 8 years now, and that partnership has been extremely successful for both. Their demographic well fits my demographic at the restaurant. We do see a lot of business that will come prior and post-game. My guests do have the opportunity to enjoy the fireworks display after the games free of charge there. But that team there does draw, like myself, 95% of our guests, probably at least a minimum of 25 miles outside our immediate area to use our facilities. So that is people coming into Wyandotte County to spend their money at their location and then our location post and pre-games. I rely on that business to make my business as successful as it has been, as well as reaping the rewards now of the Sporting KC Stadium as well. So both of those are a huge part of the success of Village West